Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Bowman Color Team Sets, where we take a look at the cards that comprise each team in the Bowman set and see what they were up to during the 1953 season. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Chicago Cubs, who had very little to celebrate in 1953, with the exception of 2 weeks in September, when the stars aligned and they became the team to beat in baseball. And to help us through the story, we have fellow YouTuber and Chicago Cubs fan Chuck Northside Guy. But before we get into that, let's take a look at the cards themselves. Okay, so first up today is Harry Cheedy. Harry's claim to fame is that he was the first player ever to be traded for himself. If you're not familiar with that story, I'd go look it up. It's pretty entertaining, if a little depressing. Next up is Phil Cavarretta, who was the manager of the Cubs. He also played for the Cubs earlier in his career. He managed for 3 seasons, and then he got fired in spring training of 1954 for admitting that the Cubs would be lucky if they finished 5th. I guess it doesn't pay to be honest. Next up is Tommy Brown. He started his career during World War II when there were a lot of player shortages, and he was the second youngest player all time at 16 years old for the Brooklyn Dodgers. Next up is probably the biggest card amongst all the Cubs in this set. It's Hank Sauer. Sauer was the 1952 most valuable player. Love this card, love the pose, and certainly the polo grounds in the background, holding 3 bats. Just a classic card. Here's Paul Minner, one of many pitchers featured amongst the Cubs in this set. He spent 10 years in the majors. He has the distinction of giving up the very first home run in Frank Robinson's career. Here's Bob Addis. He was part of a massive 10-player trade to the Pirates that happened in this season, and that included Hall of Famer Ralph Kiner coming to Chicago. Here's a fun story about Bob Rush. In 1950, he and Warren Spahn each stole a base against each other as pitchers. That didn't happen again until 2004, when Jason Marquis and Greg Maddux did it again. Here's Toby Atwell. His best year was in 1952 when he was a rookie with the Cubs. He made the All-Star team, and he was also part of that massive trade to Pittsburgh for Ralph Kiner. Here's Bill Serena. Bill Serena had a pretty good year at the plate in 53. He had a .251 average, 10 homers, and 52 RBI. Warren Hacker. His best year as a pitcher was in 52. He was 15-9 with a 2.58 ERA. He had 5 shutouts. Last but not least is Omar Turk Lone. If I'm not mistaken, I remember learning about his nickname. I think he got it from eating turkey sandwiches. And now, not really a part of the set, but I wanted to bring him up, Ralph Kiner, who at the time of the photographs for the 53 set was on the Pirates, but he's going to factor into our story today. And of course, Ernie Banks. Ernie Banks didn't have a card in 1953, but he also is going to make a cameo towards the end of our story today. And there you have it, the complete 1953 Bowman Color Team set of the Chicago Cubs. Now let's turn it over to Chuck Northside Guy, who will lay out how the Cubs surprised themselves and everybody else in baseball with some stellar play early in September of 1953.
Towards the end of the 1953 season, the Chicago Cubs found themselves heading towards a historic franchise record. But this wasn't the kind of record you'd want to get a lot of publicity about. By early September, the Cubs were 50-82 and were on pace to post the worst win-loss record in the history of the franchise. Not even the reigning 1952 MVP, Hank Sauer, nor the midseason acquisition of future Hall of Famer Ralph Kiner could change the Cubs' fortunes in '53. In short, the offense was weak, pitching was, well, even worse than the offense. In a larger sense, this was not news to the city of Chicago, or anyone in baseball for that matter. It had been 7 years since the last winning season had been played in the friendly confines. Things were so bad that promoters tried to use anything they could to lure people back to the ballgame. Anything, that is, except the ballgame itself. But being on pace to lose 98 games must have stirred something in the collective soul of the Cubs that September, because suddenly, out of nowhere, they started winning. It all began innocently enough with a 5-4 victory over the Cincinnati Reds. Then another followed, a 7-6 victory with a double and a steal at home plate in the bottom of the ninth at Wrigley. Now they had a streak going, and as it turns out, it was just the start. On September 7th, a Ralph Kiner single and a Hank Sauer double in the bottom of the sixth contributed to a 4-3 victory over the Milwaukee Braves. On September 9th, Kiner would again factor into the drama, coming to the plate in the bottom of the ninth with 2 runners on and the Cubs down by 2. He would smack a homer over the outfield ivy for another Cubs walk-off victory. Then another win came, and another. It suddenly seemed as if the Cubbies would never lose again. The highlight may have been on September 14th when pitcher Johnny Clipstein threw a complete game and a convincing 3-1 win over the pennant-bound Brooklyn Dodgers. It was the Cubs' 10th win in a row. A writer for the Chicago Tribune noted that the Cubs' delightful side game, Who's in 7th Place, continued apace yesterday in Wrigley Field, which has not been sullied by a Chicago defeat in this glorious month of September. The streak would end the next day, however, when the Cubs fell to Robin Roberts and the Philadelphia Phillies 4-2. The Cubs would finish the season with a 65-89 record and only stayed out of the National League cellar because the Pittsburgh Pirates occupied it with 104 losses. For the Cubs, the redeeming moment of the '53 season was at the short-lived bright spot in early September when they could do no wrong. And then, 3 days after the end of their 10-game winning streak in front of just 2,800 fans at Wrigley Field, a skinny young shortstop made his major league debut. It was Ernie Banks' first big league game.
So that about does it for this episode of the Bowman Color Team Sets. I want to send out a special thanks to Chuck Northside Guy for his great contribution to this episode. And if you have not visited his YouTube channel before, you're going to want to check out the link that's posted below. Get over there and enjoy Chuck's amazing card collection. Thanks as always everyone for checking out the video. Definitely looking forward to the discussions that follow. I'll go ahead and get started on the next episode, but until then, take care, and I'll talk to you all soon.